Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we will speak for oldest villages in the world. It is likely that we will never know for sure what is the oldest city, oldest town, or oldest village. It is probable that none of the settlements now regarded as holding these honors are in fact what they claim to be. There may be some as yet discovered site out there that is the true holder of the title. The evidence now available suggests 1700 BC as a likely date for the beginning of cities, which were the size of a modern mid-size or even small towns. The oldest known villages have been dated to around 30,000 years ago. The problem here is defining what a village is. Mladeč Caves, the world's oldest village. The Mladeč Caves is the Czech Republic is regarded by some as the world's oldest village. Bones found there, dated to 31,000 years before present, are claimed to be the oldest human bones that clearly represent a human settlement in Europe. Located 10 kilometers from Hanak, which is not far from the Moravia River, the town of Lidovel and the protected nature landscape area of Lidovelsk Moravia, the caves comprise a complex, multi-floor labyrinth of fissure passages, caves and domes inside the calcite hill Trezin. Some of the underground spaces are richly decorated. The Mladeč Caves are located at an elevation of 343 meters, 1,125 feet. The humans that lived there were early modern men, Cro-Magnon, of the Upper Paleolithic period and Aurignacian culture. The site was discovered by Joseph Sambathy and excavated in 1881 to 1882 and 1903 to 1922. It is currently managed by the Cave Administration of the Czech Republic. Highlights include Nature's Temple and the Virgin Cave, but the caves associated with early humans are not open to the public. The limestones in Mladeč Karst belong geologically to one of the belts of the Devonian rocks in the central Moravian part of the Bohemian Massif, the Konus Mladeč Devonian. The caves consist primarily of horizontal and very broken labyrinth of corridors, domes and high chimneys with remarkable modeling of walls and ceilings, and stalactites and stalagmites. The archaeological remains found in Mladeč Caves represent the oldest, largest and most northern settlements yet found of early modern man, Cro-Magnon man, in Europe. These people lived here 31,000 years ago. The large number of bones from Stone Age human skeletons, Pleistocene vertebrates along with a large number of fireplaces and stone instruments means that a fairly large number of people used the cave, making it an early settlement or village. Dolní Věstonice is another candidate for the world's oldest village, based on its age and the large amount artisanship and activity that went on there. An Upper Paleolithic archaeological site near the village of Dolní Věstonice, Moravia in the Czech Republic, on the base of 549-meter-high Devon Mountain. It thrived 26,000 years ago based on radiocarbon dating of objects and remains found there. The site is unique and special because of the large number of prehistoric artifacts, especially art, dating from the Gravettian period, roughly 27,000 to 20,000 BC. Found there. The artifacts includes carved representations of men, women, and animals, along with personal ornaments, human burials and enigmatic engravings. The Stone Age men at Dolní Věstonice and Pavlov sites in the Czech Republic had textiles, ceramics, cords, mats, and baskets. Evidence of these things are impressions left on clay chips recovered from clay floors hardened by a fire. The impressions of textiles indicate that these people may have made wall hangings, cloth, bags, blankets, mats, rugs and other similar items. Ancient men at Dolní Věstonice and Pavlov in the Czech Republic ate a lot of meat. They cooked stews and gruel in pits lined with hide and heated with hot rocks. In October 2004, team of European and Israeli archaeologists unearthed the oldest known clay fireplaces made by humans at a dig in southern Greece. The hearths, excavated from the Klesura cave, in the northwest Peloponnesus, are at least 23,000 to 34,000 years old and were probably used for cooking by prehistoric residents of the area, according to the archaeology journal Antiquity. In 2017, a doctoral student from the University of Victoria announced that she had found evidence of a 14,000-year-old settlement on Triquet Island on British Columbia's central coast. Leanna Garfield wrote in Business Insider, for hundreds, perhaps thousands, of years, generations of the Heiltsuk Nation, an indigenous group in British Columbia, have passed down the oral histories of where they came from. The nation claims that its ancestors fled for survival to a coastal area in Canada that never froze during the Ice Age. A new excavation on Triquet Island, on British Columbia's central coast, has now backed up that claim. Archaeologist Alicia Gavreau, a doctoral student from the University of Victoria and a scholar with the Research Institute Hakai, led a team that excavated the site in late 2016. They discovered several artifacts from what appears to be an ancient village, including carved wooden tools and bits of charcoal, in a thin horizontal layer of soil, called paleosol. The team sent the charcoal flakes to a lab for carbon dating and found that the pieces date back between 13,613 to 14,086 years ago, thousands of years before Egypt built its pyramids. The artifacts are some of the oldest found in North America. In 1977, Washington State University archaeologists excavated a spear tip and mastodon rib bone, an extinct species related to elephants, near Washington's Olympic Peninsula. After CT scans in 2011, the fossils pushed estimates of the earliest human habitation on the west coast back by 800 years, to about 13,800 years before present day. Chur in Switzerland. In 1998, construction workers excavating a parking lot in Chur, Switzerland, on the Rhine River near Liechtenstein, uncovered archaeological artifacts dating back to about 11,000 BC. Chur is often described as the oldest city in Switzerland. If the artifacts are in fact evidence of a village or city, Chur would be 2,000 years older than Jericho. In Neuchâtel, at nearly the opposite, western end of Switzerland, the country, archaeologists have found artifacts dating to about 13,000 BC, some 2,000 years older than those in Chur. Switzerland is the home of other early historical milestones. Among the world's oldest examples of art are two Paleolithic harpoons, at least 60,000 years old, decorated with geometric figures discovered at Verrières near Geneva. One of the oldest wheels ever found is a 4,000-year-old wooden disc discovered at an archaeological site near Zurich. The wheel now can be seen in the Zurich Museum. Not many older wheels have been found. Wood usually rots to dust within a century or so. The Bernisches Historisches Museum is Bern houses a 4,000-year-old axe with a jade blade and an antler socket and handle. The axe was made by people from the stick axe culture. The oldest known opium cultivators were the Neuchâtel shoreline culture, people who lived around a Swiss lake in the 4th millennium BC. Traces of opium have been excavated from archaeological sites there. Damascus, currently the capital and largest city in Syria, is widely regarded as world's oldest continually inhabited city. There is evidence of human habitation as far back as 5000 BC. It bases this claim perhaps on the fact that modern Damascus is a large thriving city, whereas Jericho, which is older and also claims to be the world's oldest city, is located about 2 kilometers away from modern Jericho, a rundown town surrounded by refugee camps. Excavations at Tel Ramad on the outskirts of Damascus have demonstrated that the general area was inhabited as early as 900 BC. However, it is not documented as an important city until the arrival of the Arameans in the 13th century BC. Situated at an elevation of about 375 meters, Damascus sits on the barren inland side of the anti-Lebanon mountains on a fertile plain watered by irrigation canals running from the Barata River, where olives, grapes, oranges, citron, pomegranates, figs, pears and other fruits have been grown. Devout Muslims believe that Damascus occupies the site of the Garden of Eden, and tradition holds that when the Prophet Muhammad looked upon the city he refused to enter it, not wishing to anticipate paradise. The first great Muslim dynasty, the Umayyads, were based here. Damascus was established as a city around green oasis, called Al-Ghudda, on the Barata River around 2500 BC and has been occupied by Arameans, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Nabateans, Greeks, Romans, Syrian Christians, Byzantines, Arabs, Crusaders, Mamluks, Ottoman Turks, Frenchmen and Syrians. It was conquered by David, Alexander the Great, and Tamerlane. Saladin is buried here. Jericho, the biblical city of Joshua, trumpets and falling walls, is regarded by some as the oldest city in the world. Established around 7500 BC in an arid valley 600 feet below sea level in Palestine near the Dead Sea, ancient Jericho was home to 2,000 to 3,000 people that survived on plants that thrived in a fertile area around an oasis. Strains of wheat and barley and obsidian tools have been discovered that came from elsewhere. Ancient Jericho had an elaborate system of walls, towers and moats. The circular wall that surrounded the settlement had a circumference of about 200 meters and was 4 meters high. The wall in turn was surrounded by a 30-foot wide, 10-foot deep moat. The technology used to build them was virtually the same as those used in medieval castles. Located near a permanent spring a few miles west of the Jordan River and excavated by Kathleen Kenyon, Jericho is certainly one of the world's oldest fortified settlement, but whether it qualifies as a city is a matter of some debate. There are indications of settlement after 900 BC. This settlement grew to city-like status by 700 BC. The archaeological site is situated in the plain of the Jordan Valley 2 kilometers northwest of modern Jericho City. It is a large artificial mound, rising 21 meters high and covering an area of about 1 acre. In 700 BC, Jericho encompassed of about 8 to 10 acres and was home to estimated 2 to 3,000 people. It was inhabited by people who depended on collecting wild seeds for food.
Catal Huyuk, the world's oldest town. Huyuk, 30 miles southeast of Konya in Turkey, is widely accepted as being the world's oldest village or town. Established around 7500 BC, it covered 32 acres and was home to between 3,000 to 8,000 people. Huyuk was occupied for about 1,700 years, between 9,400 and 7,700 years ago, which is fairly long when you consider that New York City was founded not much more than 300 years ago. The 3,000 to 8,000 people that lived in Huyuk at a given time were farmers and herders of cattle. They venerated bulls and worshipped a mother goddess. They produced paintings of hunting scenes and shaped objects from obsidian quarried hundreds of miles to the north, indicating long-distance trade.
Catal Huyuk, pronounced Catal Huyuk, means fork mound in Turkish, a reference to a fork in the footpath before the main mound at the site. Clustered in a honeycomb-like maze, it consists of two mounds on either side of an ancient channel of the Karsamba River on the fertile Konya plain. The largest mound, 33.5-acre Catal Huyuk East, was occupied between 7400 and 5000 BC, but there are older undated levels below it. The smaller mound, Catal Huyuk West, was occupied between 5000 and 4700 BC. In addition to being very old, Catal Huyuk is remarkably well preserved. Around it today are melon fields and wheat fields. In 7500 BC, there were marshes nearby that may have been flooded for 2 or 3 months a year. At that time, agricultural fields were some distance from the town. Ain Ghazal, an archaeological site in Amman, Jordan, was one of the largest population centers in the Middle East, 3 times larger than Jericho. From 7200 to 5000 BC, a period in human history when semi-nomadic hunters and gatherers were adapting to farming and animals herding and organizing themselves into cities. Ain Ghazal covers about 30 acres. The people were farmers and hunters and gatherers. They used stone tools and weapons and made clay figures and vessels. They lived in multi-room houses with stone walls and timber roof beams and cooking hearths. Plaster with decorations covered the walls and floors. They are meat and milk products from goats, grew wheat, barley, lentils, peas and chickpeas, hunted wild cattle, boar and gazelles, and gathered wild plants, almonds, figs and pistachios. Mysterious human figures unearthed at Ain Ghazal are among the oldest human statues ever found. Made of lime plaster and dating back to 700 BC, the figures were about 3.5 feet tall and have bitumen-accented eyes and look like aliens from outer space. Scholars believe they played a ceremonial role and may have been images of gods or heroes. The figures were discovered 1985 by the driver of a bulldozers clearing the way for a road. The statues were made of delicate materials, so delicate the whole site was unearthed and shipped to a Smithsonian laboratory where the figures it took 10 years to assemble the figures. The settlement of Jarmo, east of Kirkuk in the foothills of the Zagros Mountains in northeastern Iraq, dates to about 7090 BC. Also called Kalat Jarmo, contains approximately a dozen layers of architectural building and renovation. One of the world's first village farming communities, it has yielded evidence of domesticated wheats and barley, and of the dog and goat domestication, suggesting a settled agricultural way of life. Other artifacts found at Jarmo include flint sickle blades, milling stones, and, later, pottery, hint at the technological innovations made in response to the new way of food production. The original occupation of the site is estimated to have occurred at about 7000 BC. Jarmo lies at an altitude of 800 meters above sea level, in a belt of oak and pistachio woodlands. Excavations have revealed that Jarmo was an agricultural community dating back to 7090 BC. The site was originally discovered by the Iraqi Directorate of Antiquities in 1940, and was excavated in 1948, 1950-51 and 1954-55 by archaeologist Robert Braidwood from the University of Chicago Oriental Institute, who researched the origins of the Neolithic Revolution. Braidwood was the first to use a multidisciplinary approach in an attempt to refine the research methods and clarify the origin of the domestication of plants and animals. His team included a geologist, a paleobotanist, an expert in pottery and radiocarbon dating, and a zoologist, Charles Reed, as well as a number of archaeologists. The interdisciplinary method was subsequently used in all serious field work in archaeology. Jiahu is a rich, but little-known archaeological site located near the village of Jiahu near the Yellow River in Henan Province in central China. About equidistant between Xi'an and Nanjing, the site was occupied from 9,000 to 7,700 years ago and then from 2,000 years ago to the present. In addition to yielding the world's oldest wine and some of the oldest rice and earliest playable musical instruments, it may have also yielded the earliest examples of Chinese writing. The archaeological site of Jiahu in the Yellow River Basin of Henan Province, central China, is remarkable for the cultural and artistic remains uncovered there. These remains, such as houses, kilns, pottery, turquoise carvings, tools made from stone and bone, and most remarkably, bone flutes, are evidence of a flourishing and complex society as early as the Neolithic period, when Jiahu was first occupied. Fragments of 30 flutes were discovered in the burials at Jiahu, and 6 of these represent the earliest examples of playable musical instruments ever found. The flutes were carved from the wing bone of the red-crowned crane, with 5 to 8 holes capable of producing varied sounds in a nearly accurate octave. The intended use of the flutes for the Neolithic musician is unknown, but it is speculated that they functioned in rituals and special ceremonies. Chinese myths known from nearly 6,000 years after the flutes were made tell of the cosmological importance of music and the association of flute playing and cranes. The sound of the flutes is alleged to lure cranes to a waiting hunter. Whether the same association between flutes and cranes existed for the Neolithic inhabitants at Jiahu is not known, but the remains there may provide clues to the underpinnings of later cultural traditions in central China.